What would you do if at 18 you found out you were pregnant and your parents gave you an ultimatum, end the pregnancy or leave their house forever? This is my story. When I refused to give up my baby, they threw me out like I was nothing. I tried to make them understand that what they were asking was wrong, but my father wouldn't hear a word of it. My name is Celeste Vaughan, and at 28, I am finally returning to the town that once cast me out. My father, Adam Vaughan, stands on the brink of winning the mayoral race, preaching about family values and integrity. My ex, Dorian Harper, is living the life he thought I was unworthy of, standing beside my sister as her devoted husband. They believe I am long gone, buried under the weight of their betrayals, struggling, forgotten. But they're wrong. I'm not the naive 18-year-old girl they abandoned a decade ago. I am not broken. I am not begging. I have built myself from the ashes of their rejection, and today, I don't return as a forgotten disgrace. I return as their reckoning. The night they threw me out is burned into my memory like a scar that will never fade. It was late, past midnight, when my father made his decision final. I stood in the living room, my hands trembling as I clutched my stomach, still trying to process what was happening. "You have two choices, Celeste," he said, his voice void of any emotion. "You get rid of it, or you get out." I looked at my mother, silently begging for some ounce of maternal instinct, some sign that she would fight for me. But she just sat there, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line, her hands folded neatly in her lap like I was some inconvenience she wished would disappear. And my sister, Sophia, stood behind them, arms crossed, watching me like I was a stain on her perfect existence. She had always been their golden child, the one who followed the rules, who did exactly what they expected. I was the disappointment. "Dad, please," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I can't do what you're asking." His expression hardened. "Then you no longer have a place in this family." The words landed like a slap. I wanted to scream, to make him see reason, but deep down, I already knew it was useless. My father wasn't a man who changed his mind. He made decisions like a judge handing down a sentence, and once the gavel dropped, there was no appeal. Tears burned at the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I'll go," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. There was no dramatic exit, no last-minute change of heart. Just silence. My father turned his back on me, my mother stared at the floor, and Sophia, she smirked. That was the moment I realized I was truly alone. I grabbed a duffel bag, stuffed in whatever clothes I could fit, and walked out into the cold night, the house I had spent my entire life in, the house that should have been my home, closed behind me with a final, resounding click. They never looked back. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have money. I didn't even have a place to go. The first night I slept in my car parked behind a gas station on the outskirts of town. It was freezing. My body ached, my stomach churned with a sickness that was equal parts pregnancy and fear. By the second night, I had no choice but to call the one person my parents had always warned me to stay away from, Marlene Vaughan. She answered on the second ring. "Celeste?" I broke down. An hour later, she was there, wrapping me in a blanket and pulling me into the passenger seat of her beat-up Jeep. She didn't ask me what happened. She already knew. Instead, she just said, "They're monsters." I wanted to argue, to defend them, because even after everything, they were still my family. But the words wouldn't come, because she was right. Marlene wasn't like the Vaughans. She had been cast out years before, labelled as the black sheep because she refused to conform. She lived in a tiny house 2 states away, made her own rules, and didn't give a damn what anyone thought. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being told what to do, how to act, who to be. But freedom came with a cost. I worked 2 jobs while going to school, barely scraping by. My pregnancy was brutal, morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion so deep I thought I might drown in it. But through it all, I held on to one thing. I was going to prove them wrong. And I did. I finished school. I built a business from nothing. I raised my son Liam without the shadow of my parents looming over me. For 10 years I stayed away. I never looked back. But now I am back, and this time I hold the power. I step out of the car, my heels clicking against the pavement as I take in the familiar skyline of my hometown. Everything looks the same, but I am not the same girl who left this place in the dead of night, broken and discarded. I walk past a newspaper stand, and there it is, Adam Vaughn, the face of family values. A bitter laugh escapes me. They built their lives on a lie. My father is running for mayor, selling a carefully curated image of the perfect family. My sister and my ex-fiancé are living their dream, the golden couple with their white picket fence. They think I disappeared. They think I've been struggling, that I've faded into nothing. They couldn't be more wrong. I didn't disappear, I thrived. And now, I'm here to burn everything they built to the ground, because I know their secrets, all of them, and the reckoning starts now. Marlene used to say, the only thing more dangerous than a lie is the person who knows the truth. I didn't understand what she meant back then. I was too busy trying to survive, trying to keep my head above water while juggling a newborn, a job, and college classes that felt like a constant uphill battle. But now, I understand. When I left this town, I was nothing, just a pregnant girl with no money, no safety net, no future. My father made sure of that. But he made one mistake. He assumed I would stay gone. He assumed wrong. For 10 years, I followed their lives from a distance, collecting every sliver of information I could. I didn't stalk them, I didn't obsess, I just waited. I watched as Adam Vaughn climbed his way up from respected professor to city councilman, then to state representative, and now his biggest move yet, mayoral candidate. I watched as Sophia, my perfect older sister, paraded around with Dorian Harper, the man who once whispered empty promises into my ear before discarding me like I was an inconvenience. I watched as they built their empire on lies, painting themselves as the epitome of class, of honor, of family values. And I watched, knowing that one day I'd be back to rip it all apart. When I walked out of that house 10 years ago, I was nothing more than an afterthought to them. An embarrassment, a mistake they wiped clean from their narrative. But when I walked back in, I made sure I looked like something they wanted. I didn't come back as the lost girl they threw out. I came back as a businesswoman, as the owner of Luna & Co., a thriving restaurant chain that started as a tiny cafe and grew into something they could never have predicted. Money, success, power. That's what gets their attention. That's what makes them uncomfortable. Because in their world, people like me, people they discarded, aren't supposed to come back better. I don't reach out. I don't announce my return. I just let the rumors spread, let the whispers of Celeste Vaughn is back crawl under their skin, because I know them, and I know their first reaction won't be fear, it'll be curiosity. They'll want to know if I'm a threat. They'll try to size me up, figure out if I'm worth their attention. And once they do, that's when the real fun begins. The Vaughns built their empire on illusion. They crafted their image with careful precision, making sure no part of their past could ever taint their perfect present. But perfection is a lie, and lies always crack. I hired a private investigator 6 months before returning, not because I needed dirt, no, I already knew most of their skeletons, but because I needed proof, and what I found, it was so much worse than I imagined. First, there's Sophia, the golden child, the flawless daughter, the one who did everything right, except her marriage isn't as perfect as she wants the world to believe. She and Dorian, they're drowning in debt, not because they're struggling, but because Dorian gambles. Oh, he hides it well. He always has. Even back when we were together, I saw the signs. Late nights, disappearing money, a desperate hunger behind his eyes whenever a bet was involved. But now he's thousands of dollars in the hole, and Sophia has no idea. Or maybe she does. Maybe she just chooses not to see it. Because to her, admitting that her marriage is failing would mean admitting that I was right. Then there's my mother, Elaine Vaughn, the loyal wife, the quiet, poised woman who always stood a step behind my father, nodding at all the right moments, never speaking out of turn. She's having an affair with his campaign manager. Oh, the irony. And then the biggest crack of all. Adam Vaughan, the man who has spent his entire life convincing the world that he is the definition of morality, of strength, of leadership. He had a child before Sophia and me, a son. A son he abandoned at birth because he was born disabled. I had no idea I had a brother. I doubt Sophia knows either. But the records don't lie. My father and mother left him at the hospital, signed away their rights, and never looked back. The boy, Nathaniel Pierce, was adopted by a family in another state, grew up to be a successful writer. He built a life without ever knowing that his real parents were the ones who tossed him aside. Just like they did to me. Just like they would have done to my son if I had listened to them. I don't storm into their world, throwing accusations and demanding justice. No. I let the truth do the work for me. I reach out to Nathaniel. Not as a bitter sister seeking revenge, but as someone who understands what it means to be erased. I tell him the truth, and together, we form a plan, because the Vaughans built their lives on a foundation of deceit, and it only takes one well-placed tremor to bring the whole damn thing crumbling down. They spent 10 years pretending I didn't exist. Now, they won't be able to ignore me. Not when their secrets start unraveling, not when the lies they told begin to suffocate them. Not when I take back everything they stole from me, because this time, I'm not knocking on their door, asking for a seat at their table. I'm burning the whole house down. It doesn't take long before whispers of my return reach them. I knew it would happen. It was inevitable. A town like this, people talk. It starts small, a passing comment at a country club, a hushed conversation in the back of a church after Sunday service. The Celeste Vaughan is back, murmurs spreading like a slow-burning wildfire. I can picture exactly how it plays out. Sophia standing in front of a mirror, perfecting her practice smile while Dorian fastens his cufflinks. Her phone buzzes, a text from a mutual acquaintance, dripping with curiosity and just a hint of condescension. "Did you hear? Your sister's back in town?" Her fingers tighten around the phone, her stomach twists, but she won't let it show, not yet. She'll wait. She'll pretend it doesn't bother her. And when she finally mentions it to my father, calmly, casually, over an expensive glass of bourbon in his private study, he won't react. Because Adam Vaughan never reacts. He controls, he calculates, he dictates the narrative before it dictates him. But deep down, he'll feel it, that first flicker of unease, and he'll bury it under the same arrogance that made him believe I was gone for good. It doesn't take long before the first strike comes, a calculated chess move, meant to remind me of my place. An invitation. Not from them, of course. They'd never be so obvious. No, it comes from an old family friend. Someone high enough in their circle to make it seem natural, but distant enough to maintain plausible deniability. A gala. A charity event. Some bullshit excuse to parade their perfect little dynasty in front of the world. The message is clear. We see you, we know you're here, and we want you to remember who really holds the power. I almost laugh, because they still think power is about money, about status, about who gets to sit at the head of the table. But real power? Real power is knowing things they don't want the world to know, and I have plenty. So I accept the invitation, not because I want to mend fences, not because I want closure, but because I want to look them in the eye when their world starts to crack. The venue is immaculate, of course it is. They don't do anything small, crystal chandeliers, white-gloved waiters, tables lined with champagne flutes, and laughter that sounds just a little too forced. And there, at the center of it all, is my father, Adam Vaughan, in his perfectly tailored suit, shaking hands, working the room like the master manipulator he's always been. Sophia, draped in expensive silk, standing beside Dorian, the man who once told me he loved me before choosing her instead. She keeps her posture straight, her smile effortlessly warm, but I see it now, the tiny stiffness in her shoulders, the way her fingers curl just a little too tight around the stem of her wineglass. She's nervous, she won't show it, but she feels it. And then Then's my mother, Elaine Vaughan, the silent force behind my father's throne, still beautiful, still cold, still the woman who watched as her husband threw me out like garbage and never lifted a finger to stop it. They all think they're in control. They all think this night belongs to them, but they don't know what I know. I wait, I move through the room, exchanging pleasantries, letting them see me without acknowledging them first. I can feel their eyes on me. I can feel the way the energy shifts as people start whispering, wondering what the hell I'm doing here. And then finally, my father makes his move. He approaches, glass in hand, that familiar authoritative stance he's perfected over the years. "Celeste," he says, his voice smooth, controlled. It's been a long time. A statement, not a question, a test, a reminder that he still believes himself to be the one in charge of this conversation. I tilt my head, letting a slow smile creep across my lips. "I suppose it has," I say, taking a sip of champagne. "Though I must say, you haven't changed much." He chuckles, a practiced sound, a performance for the audience lingering close enough to eavesdrop. "You look, well," he continues, eyes scanning me, searching for any sign of weakness. He won't find one. "Thank you," I say simply. Success tends to agree with me. Something flickers behind his eyes, just for a second. Just enough for me to see it. Doubt. He didn't expect that. He didn't expect me. And before he can recover, I lean in slightly, lowering my voice just enough so that only he can hear. "By the way, Dad, I had the most fascinating conversation recently." His jaw tightens, barely perceptible. He schools his expression quickly, but I see it, the first crack. I don't elaborate. I don't need to. I just let the words settle, let the silence stretch just long enough to make him wonder. Which conversation? With who? What does she know? He doesn't ask. He won't, not yet. Because asking would mean acknowledging that I have something worth fearing. Instead, he forces another smile, another chuckle, and clings his glass against mine. "Well, Celeste," he says smoothly, "I hope you enjoy the evening." I return his smile, lifting my glass in mock celebration. "Oh, I will," I say, letting my eyes linger just a second too long. "I definitely will." And then I turn, walking away, leaving him standing there. Still holding his drink, still forcing that goddamn smile. He thinks this is just another game of control. He thinks he's still the one pulling the strings. But what he doesn't realize is that the game is already over. He just doesn't know he's lost yet. The key to a good takedown isn't rage, isn't reckless revenge, throwing punches in the dark, hoping one lands. No, the key is patience, precision, and I've been patient for 10 years. The first strike has to be subtle, just enough to knock them off balance, to make them question their stability. So I start with Sophia. She was always the weakest link, not because she isn't smart, but because she's desperate to maintain the illusion. The perfect daughter, the devoted wife, the woman who has it all. And I know her weakness? Dorian's gambling. I spent weeks gathering proof, bank statements, casino withdrawals, IOU signed in his name. He's in deeper than even I expected, owing money to people who don't take "I need more time" as an answer. So I make a move. A simple, anonymous envelope, no return address, nor message, just cold, hard proof delivered straight to Sophia's hands. It doesn't take long for the chaos to begin. 3 days after she receives it, their perfect little world starts to shake. A friend of mine, one of my old high school acquaintances, who now works at the country club, texts me a single line. "Sophia stormed out of brunch today. Looked like she was about to kill someone." I smile. That's the thing about people like Sophia. They don't confront their problems head on. No, they let them fester until they explode at the worst possible moment. And I know exactly when that moment will be. While Sophia's busy unraveling, I turn my focus to my father. He's days away from securing the mayoral election. Poll numbers are high, public support is unwavering. But people love to eat up a scandal. And I have just the thing. Nathaniel, the brother I never knew I had, the son my father abandoned at birth because he wasn't perfect enough to fit the Vaughan legacy. Nathaniel spent years thinking he was unwanted, that no one had fought for him, that he was left behind simply because life was cruel, until I told him the truth. until I handed him the documents, the proof, the signed hospital records that my father had erased from history. And now, Nathaniel is ready to step into the light. I arranged for an exclusive interview with one of the biggest investigative journalists in the state. A full expose, scheduled to drop just 3 days before election night. Timing is everything. Because by the time my father realizes what's happening, it will already be too late. The article hits like a bomb. By noon, it's everywhere. The Secret Son, Adam Vaughan's hidden past exposed. The headline is brutal. The article is even worse. Nathaniel doesn't hold back. He tells everything, how he was abandoned, how my father signed him away like a defective product, how he grew up believing he was unworthy of love because of a man who valued his reputation more than his own blood. And the best part? The reporter doesn't just take his word for it. They have the documents. The birth certificate, the hospital records, the proof. There is no denying it. And within hours, my father's carefully curated campaign begins to fall apart. By the time the press conference is scheduled that evening, the Vaughans are in full damage control mode. Sophia has vanished from the public eye, probably locked away somewhere, screaming at Dorian, demanding explanations he doesn't have. My mother stands beside my father, silent as always, her expression frozen into that same unreadable mask she's worn my entire life. And my father, for the first time in years, he looks rattled. Good. I watch from a distance as he steps up to the podium, cameras flashing, reporters shouting over one another. Mr. Vaughan, do you deny these allegations? What do you say to the claims that you abandoned your own child? Are you stepping down from the race? He raises his hand, attempting to quiet the storm. My opponents have gone to great lengths to slander my name. Lie. This is a coordinated attack. Lie. I have always been a man of integrity. Lie. I watch as the words fall flat, as the reporters don't buy a second of it, as the public, his loyal supporters, begin to shift, to whisper, to doubt. And then, just as I planned, the final nail in his coffin arrives. A new voice cuts through the noise. I have a question, Dad. Silence. The cameras swing toward me, reporters turn, and for the first time since I walked into this town, my father looks at me not with dismissal, but with fear. I step forward, every ounce of composure carefully maintained. Tell me, I say, my voice carrying through the crowd. How does it feel, knowing that no matter how hard you try, the truth will always find its way out? His mouth opens, closes. There's no answer. Because there isn't one. And just like that, the Vaughan Empire collapses. The fallout is glorious. By morning, my father's campaign is over. He releases a statement announcing his withdrawal from the race. He doesn't even bother with another excuse, just a vague, I need to focus on my family. Sophia, she files for divorce. Dorian is exposed as the fraud he is, his gambling debts dragged into the light for the world to see. And my mother? She finally leaves my father. For the first time in my life, I see her as something other than his shadow. And for the first time, she looks at me as something other than a disappointment. But I don't stay to pick up the pieces. That's not my job. I didn't come here to fix them. I came here to end them. And now that I have, I walk away. Not broken, not begging, but victorious, because they spent 10 years pretending I was gone. Now, I'm the only thing they'll ever remember. I don't look back, not once. The town that once tried to break me shrinks in my rearview mirror, disappearing behind me like a bad dream I finally woke up from. I don't feel nostalgia. I don't feel loss. I feel light. For the first time in a decade, I am weightless. I spent years carrying the burden of their betrayal, of their rejection, of the question that haunted me in the darkest hours. Why wasn't I enough? Now, I know the answer. It was never about me. It was about them, their lies, their need for control, their inability to love anything that wasn't a reflection of their own perfection. I stopped needing their love the moment they threw me away. I just didn't realize it until now. The road stretches out before me, endless and open, and for the first time in my life, I am not running from something. I am running toward something, toward my life. I press my foot against the gas, and the past disappears behind me. 2 years pass. Not slowly, not in a blur, but in moments. In quiet Sunday mornings, drinking coffee on the porch of my own home, a house I bought, a house I built, a house that belongs only to me. In evenings spent laughing with my son, watching him grow into someone who is loved and cherished in ways I never was. He is safe, he is happy, he is mine. In boardroom meetings, standing at the helm of the business I created, no longer just a girl trying to prove she belongs, but a woman who owns the damn room. They used to whisper my name in pity, now they say it with respect. They ask how I did it, how I went from the girl they cast aside to this. I never give them an answer, because they don't deserve to know. The Vaughns are nothing now. My father never recovered. He tried, of course he did. Men like him always do. He gave a few more interviews, tried to spin the story, begged for the public to move on, but people don't forget. He is a disgrace, a pariah. The once powerful Adam Vaughn, now reduced to a relic of scandal, spending his days in a house that's far too quiet. Haunted by a silence that he created, Sophia, ever the survivor, remarried within a year. Some wealthy banker, another picture-perfect life, another illusion she's desperate to maintain. I don't check on her. I don't care. Dorian is exactly where he was always meant to be, at the bottom. He tried to reach out once, a pathetic voicemail, his voice slurring, something about regrets, about how he never stopped thinking about me. I deleted it before it even finished playing. And my mother? She finally learned what it's like to be discarded. She left my father, but she didn't leave with dignity. No quiet escape, no triumphant reinvention. Just another woman in her 60s, bitter and lost, realizing too late that she wasted her entire life standing beside a man who never really saw her. She never reached out to me. I never expected her to, and that's fine. Because I didn't do this for them, I did it for me. It happens on a normal day. I'm standing outside of one of my restaurants watching the city move around me when my phone buzzes, a text from Nathaniel. "You free for lunch?" I smile. I used to think I lost a family. Turns out I just found a better one. I meet him at a small cafe on the west side of town, the kind of place where no one cares who you are, where we can just exist without expectation. He's already waiting for me when I arrive, 2 cups of coffee sitting on the table. "Big sister is late," he teases. I smirk, dropping into the seat across from him. "Watch it. I could have left you in that hospital, you know." He chuckles, shaking his head. "Nah, you're too stubborn for that." And he's right. We sip our coffee, talking about nothing and everything. Business, life, his new book deal, my expansion plans. I used to think revenge was about destruction, but it's not. Real revenge. It's success. It's walking into a room and knowing you don't owe a single person an explanation. It's building something unbreakable from the rubble they left you in. It's winning, and I won. I take a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the sun on my face. The weight of the past completely gone. Nathaniel leans back in his chair, watching me. "So, what now?" he asks. I smile. "Whatever the hell I want." If you're reading this and you're where I was at 18, pregnant, scared, and standing on the doorstep of a house that no longer welcomes you, I want you to hear me. You are not worthless. You are not broken. You are not alone. I know it feels like your world just caved in, like the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally just proved their love had limits. Like you have nowhere to go, no plan, no future. But listen to me, you will survive this. You will find your way. You will build something stronger than what they tried to take from you. And one day you will stand in front of a mirror, unrecognizable to the person you are today. Not because you changed, but because you grew. Their rejection, it is not the end of you, it is the beginning. So take a deep breath, wipe your tears, and walk forward, even if it's slow, even if it's painful. Just keep moving, because one day you will look back at this moment and realize it wasn't you who lost them, it was them who lost you.